You know, when you walk into a giant hardware store and everything is just perfectly categorized?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like you want a 2-inch galvanized nail and you know it's an aisle 4, bin 12. It's a very, comforting illusion for us.
Right. We rely heavily on having things boxed and labeled.
Exactly. Sorted out to make sense of our days. But the second you step outside that highly controlled, sterile environment and you try to apply that same like rigid barcode scanner to the natural world,
It completely falls apart.
it shatters, even in a miniature version of the natural world, like a fish tank.
Well, it shatters because biological reality does not care about our need for neat administrative categories. I mean, nature is messy.
Yeah.
It overlaps and it's constantly evolving while we're, literally still trying to write down the name of the last thing we found.
Which brings us to our mission today. We are taking a deep dive into a really fascinating piece of source material. It perfectly captures that collision between our desperate need to categorize things and the incredibly messy reality of nature.
It really does.
It's a blog post titled Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 251, The Fish Species Identified by L Number. It was written by an author named Ang on May 8th, 2026.
And, Ang's notes serve as just a brilliant microcosm for this whole issue.
Yeah, because while the deep dive today starts by looking into aquarium fish, specifically this really striking creature known as the Royal Pleco, it quickly evolves into something else entirely.
A completely mind-bending look at human assumptions.
Right, a look at the pace of scientific discovery versus the sheer, overwhelming diversity of nature.
Because a domestic aquarium, it seems like such a contained, understood environment.
Right, it's a glass box in your living room.
Exactly. Yet it exposes these massive gaps in human perception, starting with the very foundational assumptions we make about why these animals even exist in those glass boxes.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Ang brings up this pervasive myth that almost every single beginner in the aquarium hobby falls for.
The cleaner fish myth.
The cleaner fish myth, yes. People go to the store and they buy a specific type of fish, the pleco, under the strict assumption that they are purchasing a biological janitor.
Right, they think they're hiring a cleaning service to maintain their tank.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating here is that this assumption is a pure projection of our own domestic desires onto a biological organism.
Oh, totally.
We want a self-cleaning environment, right? So we look at an animal and we assign it a chore. We completely misinterpret its biological reality.
I mean, I have to challenge that just a little bit, though.
Oh, go ahead.
Because if I walk into a pet store right now and I watch a pleco for 5 minutes, I can physically see it attached to the glass. It is sucking algae off the side. It's literally removing grime from a surface, right? I can see the clean trail it leaves behind.
Yes, you can see the trail.
So how is that not performing a utilitarian service for us? Why are humans so wrong to assume that an animal interacting with the bottom of an environment is doing a job?
Because you're just observing the mechanics of a ventral mouth.
A ventral mouth.
Right, a mouth located on the underside of its body, which evolved for scraping.
Huh.
You're seeing that mechanical action, the vacuuming, and you're projecting human chores onto it.
I see.
But you're entirely missing the biological fact of what happens after that algae goes into the mouth.
The digestion part.
Exactly. Algae and submerged wood, which is what many plecos eat, they are incredibly low-nutrient food sources.
So they have to eat a ton of it just to survive.
A relentless volume of it, yeah. They spend their entire day grazing just to maintain their mass.
Right.
And basic biology dictates that high food intake requires high waste output.
Oh, wow. So they aren't cleaning anything.
No. The reality that Ang highlights is that plecos are incredibly heavy feeders.
Yeah.
The animal you introduce to your tank to act as a vacuum cleaner is actually producing significantly more waste than almost any other fish in that ecosystem.
Okay, so it's basically like hiring a robotic vacuum for your house, right? But the vacuum powers itself by eating all the snacks in your pantry, and then it leaves behind twice as much dirt on the rug as it found in the first place.
That is a great way to put it.
And all while looking like it's doing chores.
Right. But the robotic vacuum metaphor, it implies a malfunction.
True, true.
What's fascinating here is that the pleco is functioning perfectly. It is highly adapted to its environment. The only thing broken is our human expectation.
Right, we just see a broom and think, oh, it's sweeping for me.
Exactly. We see a mouth acting like a broom, and we refuse to acknowledge the biological tax of that sweeping. The myth of the cleaner fish is just far more convenient for us than reality.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the specific fish that Aang focuses on in this post, because once the illusion of that helpful cleaner is shattered, you can actually look at the animal itself.
And it's quite an animal.
It really is. The subject of Aang's notes is this particularly stunning member of the family called the Royal Pleco.
Yes, the Royal Pleco.
And Aang describes it as massive, with this brilliant gold coloration set against these really stark black stripes.
It's visually striking.
Yeah, it's not some subtle camouflaged bottom feeder. It is an absolute showstopper of a fish.
And that visual distinctiveness is key to the paradox we're about to get into.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you would assume a fish that looks like that would be easy to identify, right?
I think so.
But Aang takes a photo of this striking fish and runs it through an artificial intelligence application designed to identify it.
A modern, cutting-edge AI.
Exactly, the pinnacle of modern tech. And if you've ever used like one of those plant identification apps in your backyard, and it gives you 3 wildly different answers for a single leaf,
Oh yeah, constantly.
then you know what happens next. The advanced AI scans the photo of the Royal Pleco and completely chokes.
It just cannot give a definitive answer.
No, it offers this really confusing dual result. It tells Aang that the fish is either Panaki armbrusteri, which is associated with this alphanumeric code L027, or it's Panaki nigrilineatus, which is L190.
2 highly specific scientific options.
Yes, my question is, how can something as visually distinct as a massive golden black striped fish be so incredibly hard for advanced AI to definitively pin down?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the AI's dual result actually highlights the extreme physical similarities and the nuanced variations within this entire genus, the Panaki genus.
Okay, so it's not just bad code?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
We have to appreciate that technology is only as good as the classification systems it relies on.
That makes sense.
Machine learning relies on clear delineations, hard borders between data points. Human taxonomy attempts to draw those hard borders around species.
But nature doesn't do hard borders.
Exactly. The Panaki genus is a biological continuum. The physical differences between an L027 and an L190 tier might come down to incredibly subtle things.
Like what?
Like nuanced variations in jaw morphology, or the specific number of rays in the dorsal fin, or even just slight regional variations in stripe thickness depending on which river basin in South America it came from.
Things that a camera lens looking through glass and water is never going to catch.
Precisely. The AI is mapping the gold and black patterns against the scientific rulebook we provided, and the rulebook is saying, well, it could be either.
It's basically throwing its hands up.
Yeah, because the natural world just refuses to adhere to our binary systems.
Yeah.
The technology fails because the biological variations completely break the digital framework.
Which brings us directly to the central thesis of Aang's blog post, and honestly, the most mind-bending part of this whole deep dive.
The L numbers themselves.
Yes. The AI spit out these weird codes, L0207 and L190 towns. So what does this all mean? What exactly are these L numbers, and why do they even exist in the first place?
Right, because they aren't formal scientific classifications.
Wait, really? They sound so official.
I know, but they aren't. The L simply stands for Loricariidae,
Okay.
which is the overarching family name for all these different armored catfish, including the Plecos.
But the numbers...
The numbers are a completely rogue invention. They were created out of pure, desperate necessity by the aquarium trade.
Okay, so let's explore that necessity. Aang points out that new species of plecos are being discovered at a rate that is vastly faster than the formal scientific community can describe them.
Vastly faster.
And name them, which is this huge bureaucratic process. But why? We have rapid genetic sequencing now. Why does it take years to name a fish?
Because formal science is deliberately conservative.
Yeah.
You can't just take a photo of a fish with a new spot pattern, post it on a forum, and declare it a new species.
I guess that would be chaos.
Total chaos. The process requires a physical holotype.
A holotype?
Yeah, a preserved specimen that gets deposited in a museum. And then an ichthyologist has to perform painstaking microscopic analysis, bone structures, scale counts, internal anatomy.
Wow. Okay.
They have to compare it against historical specimens to prove it's distinct, and then it all has to go through rigorous peer review before it's published.
So establishing a Latin name isn't just like a naming ceremony, it's a massive audit.
An audit that can take years.
And while the audit is happening in some lab, the real world is still moving.
Exactly. The exporters in South America, the hobbyists around the world, They are pulling these distinct fish out of the water today.
They can't wait 5 years for a paper to get published.
They have a fish in a bucket right now. They need to trade it, sell it, and talk about how to keep it alive.
So they essentially created a deli counter ticketing system for the tree of life.
That is the perfect way to look at it.
I mean, you find a new pleco with white polka dots.
Yeah.
The scientists say, great, put it in formaldehyde. We'll get back to you in 5 years.
Right.
And the aquarium trade says, no thanks, we're calling this one L201 and we're shipping it out tomorrow. You literally just pull a number like L190 downs and you wait in line for years until a scientist finally has time to call your number and give you a Latin name.
And this raises an important question, you know. It highlights the rigid nature of formal science versus the practical needs of everyday commerce.
The philosophical weight of that is kind of heavy, honestly.
It really is. The aquarium trade literally had to invent a rogue parallel taxonomy, a temporary placeholder system, just so people could function.
Without waiting for scientific consensus.
Yes. It highlights this beautiful chaos. The natural world is just too prolific, too fast, and too diverse for our traditional encyclopedias to keep up with.
It's an open source patch for a broken human system.
That's exactly what it is.
So, just to briefly wrap up the journey you took with us today, we started with that false assumption, the myth, that plecos are just these underwater utilitarian vacuums.
Right, projecting our chores onto them.
Yep. Then we marveled at the gold and black Royal Pleco and saw how its nuanced biology completely short-circuits the most advanced AI we have.
Exposing the limits of our own digital rulebooks.
And finally, we discovered how the Loricariidae family forced humanity, well, a subset of humanity, to invent a makeshift sequential numbering system just to keep track of its endless variety.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder, something that really builds on Eng's source material.
I'd love to hear it.
Think about this. The L-number system exists because a very specific niche subset of fish hobbyists couldn't wait for formal science to catch up.
Right.
But look out at the rest of the world. Look at the deep oceans, the rainforest canopies, the microscopic realms in our soil.
Oh, wow.
If an entire shadow system of numbers had to be invented just for the aquarium trade to function, how many other areas of our daily lives, of global commerce or medicine, are currently relying on temporary placeholders?
Because the sheer speed of nature is completely outpacing human comprehension.
Exactly. What else are we just sticking a temporary deli number on because we don't actually know what it is yet?
That is a staggering thought to end on. It means there are probably L numbers hiding everywhere in plain sight.
Without a doubt.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your assumptions, especially the ones swimming right in front of you in a glass tank. We'll catch you on the next one.